The NFL is currently entering Week 9, and you know what that means. We are halfway through the NFL season in 2016. We are that much closer to playoff football, and for some of you guys, we're that much closer to the draft to see your team pick one of their future stars. But for those teams and for those fans that are looking forward to the playoffs, I'm going to be straight up with you in this video, and I'm going to give you the top 5 contenders for the Super Bowl this season, and also the top 5 pretenders, teams that are going to make the playoffs, might even do pretty well in the playoffs, but don't have a good chance of winning the Super Bowl. Let's start off with the top 5 pretenders in the NFL this season. This is in no specific order when it comes to the pretenders, because these are all teams that are going to make the playoffs but won't be able to win the Super Bowl. Let's start off with the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are a very good offensive football team. Matt Ryan is playing the best football of his entire career. Julio Jones is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL this season. They have a great running back tandem in Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. But their defense is not that good. And their defense is the reason why they've been losing games. You know, they've been putting up consistent production on offense every single week, scoring against every single team that they've played against. They are currently ranked in the top 3 in all offensive categories pretty much. And they've been very, very good on the offensive side of the football. But when it comes to January, when it comes to playoff football, you need to be able to have a defense that is at least going to make some stops, make some plays, and going to force some turnovers. And that's exactly what the Atlanta Falcons have been unable to do this season. They're one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL, and that is why teams have already beat them in the regular season. Now just imagine playoff football that is a lot more defensive. Offenses score less points in January. The weather turns different. And now the Falcons might be able to win one playoff game in the wild card round at home, but when it comes to them traveling on the road, defense is what travels the best. And I just don't think that their defense is capable of stealing a game in the playoffs. Therefore, I think the Atlanta Falcons are one of the pretenders in 2016. The next team is very, very similar to the Atlanta Falcons. The Oakland Raiders. They are pretty much the AFC version of the Atlanta Falcons. One thing that the Raiders do have in favor over the Falcons is they have really been really good on the road. They have won 5 games on the road so far in 2016. And that's very impressive. Don't get me wrong. That's super impressive. But again, the Raiders' defense has really struggled, and their offense is going to be counted on to score a ton of points in the playoffs to beat teams with good defenses like the Chiefs, the Broncos, and then they're also going to have to maybe try and face that New England offense that doesn't have a bad defense in its own right. So there's just teams in the AFC that are a lot better off than the Oakland Raiders when it comes to playoff football. But I got to give it to Derek Carr, and I got to give it to this young team to be looking like a playoff team this season. But they just don't have the experience. Their defense isn't built enough this year. Their offense can get it done in the regular season, but when it comes to the postseason, they're going to have their struggles, especially being a wild card team, being on the road. And I know that they've played well on the road, but they haven't played those top tier teams on the road just yet. So the Oakland Raiders are a pretender in 2016. The next team that is a pretender, this is kind of hard for me to say, but Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers are a pretender in 2016. The problem with the Green Bay Packers is that they are Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. They aren't a complete team. They're a team that counts too much on their quarterback. They're an offense that is too vanilla and doesn't use a system to allow their players to shine. It's more of a player-driven system on offense. And when you don't have those top-tier players, you're going to struggle against good defenses. We saw this earlier in the season. And Aaron Rodgers is going to play his best football of his life in order to get the Green Bay Packers to the Super Bowl this season. I just don't see that happening. The Packers' defense is very inconsistent. They've been able to stop the run for the most part this year, but when it comes to passing offenses, they're going to really struggle. And if they are a wild card team, especially away from home, they don't have much of a chance of advancing in the playoffs. So I'm saying that the Green Bay Packers are a pretender in 2016. The Minnesota Vikings are also a pretender in 2016. And the reason why this is, typically I would not say that a defense as good as the Vikings defense is a pretender in any year, because we saw what happened with the Denver Broncos last year and how good their defense was. But the Vikings offense is so bad. Their offensive line is terrible. And if the Vikings continue to lose these games and fall into a wild card spot, I don't think they win a playoff game, because their offensive line is really bad. It's arguably the worst in the NFL, And with that bad offensive line, you can't be able to travel to other places where the noise is loud. The pass rush gets after you. Offensive lines, specifically bad offensive lines, don't travel well. And then when it comes to the offense, they can't run the ball. They can't pass the ball. They have one good receiver. So this isn't a team with a lot of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Their offensive line is in total flux. Their coordinator just got fired. They are starting to go straight downhill. Now, their defense will keep them in it and probably get them a playoff spot. But when it comes to the playoffs, the Minnesota Vikings are a pretender in 2016. Then we have the final pretender, the Seattle Seahawks. And this is strange because the Seahawks have been a contender every year that they've been in the playoffs since Russell Wilson has got there. But their defense isn't as strong as it used to be. They're giving up a lot of yards through the air. Their offense is just terrible. They aren't able to run the ball. Their offensive line is similar to the Vikings. It's just really bad. Russell Wilson is beat up. And with more games, he's going to get hurt more. He's going to get hit more. And that just doesn't go well with the playoffs. The Seahawks are struggling with injuries specifically to their own quarterback. Their wide receivers aren't game-breaking receivers. They rely on Russell Wilson to really get them open by scrambling around and hitting them down the field. Jimmy Graham has been inconsistent. Their offense is just very bland and very bad right now. When they can't run the ball, the Seahawks, they are just not a good offense. And then when it comes to their defense, they had now lost Michael Bennett, which is a huge loss. That is a huge player on their defense. And their defensive backs have already struggled this season when it comes to defending the pass. Sure, they're good against the run, but there are a lot of teams in the NFC that are capable of shredding them through the air. So that is why I am saying that the Seattle Seahawks are a pretender in 2016. Now, guys, let's get to the contenders in 2016, starting off with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs were a borderline contender for me, because sure, their defense is pretty good. They cause a lot of turnovers, but it's not statistically amazing. Like, it's kind of an average defense that causes a lot of turnovers and a lot of big plays, which is great, and that's great for playoff football. But the thing with the Kansas City Chiefs is, I think they're at home, they are really good and really hard to beat, and I think that the Chiefs, if they win their division, will be very hard to knock off in the playoffs. But if they don't, they're going to have to travel with that offense, and their offense isn't that good. They're going to have to be asked to score more points because their defense will probably give up a couple more touchdowns. So on the road, Alex Smith's banged up right now. We'll see how well Nick Foles plays, but they don't have a great receiver. And I think that's mostly to do with their system, because Jeremy Maclin's very talented, but they haven't got him very involved in the offense. Jamal Charles is down for the year. Spencer Ware is currently hurt, but he should be back. Their run game is pretty solid, and I think with a run game and with the defense, you have a lot of capability to win the Super Bowl. But then when it comes to facing a team like the Patriots, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs match up quite well with the Patriots, because they can't score enough points to win that game. And I think that's going to be their biggest problem. But when it comes to every other team, they could beat them. I just don't see the Chiefs beating the Patriots, which is why they're so low on this list. With other teams, I give them a higher chance of beating the Patriots. And if the Chiefs don't have to face the Patriots and they somehow make it through, then that's their best chance of winning the Super Bowl this season. But the Chiefs are a contender because they cause a lot of turnovers on defense. They have a solid unit. They have good coaching. And they have an offense that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. They run the football. And at home, they're especially dangerous. So that is why the Kansas City Chiefs are a contender this season. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a contender in my mind in 2016. Because this is one of the only teams in the NFL that can go point for point with Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, Big Ben Roethlisberger, as long as he maintains health, as long as Le'Veon Bell stays on the field, as long as Antonio Brown is out there, those three guys are so good that they cause so many problems for defenses. But because the Steelers are so injured, they'll probably have only one game at home. They might end up being the third seed in the AFC, and that might be trouble for them because they'll have to travel more when they are actually really good at home this season, especially defensively, where they play a lot better defensively at home, and that is their biggest weakness. The Steelers' defense is no good. Their secondary is bad. They're not physical, and they have been ran on at times this season. So the Steelers are very inconsistent on defense, but their offense is what makes them a contender. Their offense and their ability to score points with the best of them is what keeps them in it, and that's why I call the Pittsburgh Steelers a contender in 2016, especially if they win a lot of games on, down the stretch this season to get them that home field or to get them that bye. So the Steelers are a contender in 2016. The Dallas Cowboys are my third contender in 2016. They are the best NFC team right now. Notice how they're the only NFC team on my contenders list because the Dallas Cowboys are balanced. They can run the football, probably the best in the NFL thanks to their offensive line and Ezekiel Elliott. We'll see what happens at quarterback, whether it's Dak or Tony. Personally, this season, I think they have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl with Tony Romo, but that's only if he stays healthy, and that's a big if. And if Romo does go in there, I think, sure, at the moment they'll have a better chance, but if he gets hurt, that could ruin the entire team. So the Cowboys have a lot of dynamics along with them being successful in the season. It's going to be hard for the Cowboys to sort out everything, be perfect, everything off the field, transfer that to on the field, and have success at the same time. But their offense is explosive. They can run the ball. They have Dez Bryant, who's one of the best receivers in the league, very hard to cover. They have Cole Beasley, who stepped up into his own and become one of the better slot receivers in the game. So they have receivers, they have a running back, they have a great offensive line, and they can travel well because of that on offense. They have two quarterbacks that are capable of playing. They have a defense that has been pretty solid. I think one of their biggest weaknesses is their pass rush, and that might be huge against big-time passing teams. But when you look at the NFC, they're the most complete team. Defensively, they're capable of stopping you. Through the air, they can take your weapons out of the game. They have three good corners on their roster. And on defense, they're capable of slowing down those passing attacks of other teams. And then when it comes to their offense, they can score with the best of them. So the Dallas Cowboys are, in my opinion, the top contender and the favorite in the NFC right now as of Week 9 in the NFL. But we'll see how everything else develops. Teams like the Seahawks with their defense could give them a little bit of trouble. But again, I think the Seahawks are a pretender. So I don't think there are many contenders in the NFC to win the entire title. But if there were one team in the NFC that could win the Super Bowl, I think it's the Dallas Cowboys because of how balanced they are on both sides of the ball. The second threat to the Super Bowl is the champions, the Denver Broncos. And why I say this is because I have the clear-cut favorite being the New England Patriots, and I think most people do. And the reason why the Denver Broncos are the second favorite is because, for some reason, they do pretty well against the Patriots, especially at home. Now, on the road, they have struggled to beat the Patriots, which is pretty reasonable because nobody has been able to beat the Patriots at home for the most part in the Brady era. So the Broncos are a team with a very good defense, one of the best defenses of all time last year, a very good defense this year that's very good against the pass with a great secondary, a very good pass rush with Von Miller. Now they're getting DeMarcus Ware back healthy. Shane Ray is coming into his own. Derek Wolfe is still there. So they have some guys that can get after the pass rusher. They can defend the pass, and they can slow down the Patriots offense, probably the best of any team in the league, which is a huge key. But then when it comes to their offense, they are now missing CJ Anderson, which is absolutely huge, especially for the fact that he's been a huge thorn in the Patriots side for the last couple of years. So CJ Anderson is a huge loss to the Denver Broncos. But offensively, if they need to score points. If their offense can somehow turn around and score 24 to 27 points a game, they have a shot to win the Super Bowl this year. Because they do have Demaryius Thomas, they do have Emmanuel Sanders. Trevor Siemian needs to get it going. Gary Kubiak needs to formulate a game plan for them to score 24 to 27 points a game, and they have a chance. But especially if they get that home field. So they need to continue to win, because I don't think the Patriots are going to lose many games. The biggest game this season for the Denver Broncos is that game at home against the Patriots down the stretch. That will be a huge dictator. But of course, your number one favorite and contender for winning the Super Bowl this season is the New England Patriots. I don't know if I have to say it that much, but the Patriots are the best team in the league. You know, this contenders list is built on teams that could possibly beat the Patriots. That is how much head and shoulders they are above the rest of the teams in the NFL right now. Of course, they have Tom Brady, who's playing at an all-time high level right now in efficiency. Look at his statistics. They're absolutely off the charts. Their defense has not played that great, and it could play a lot better, which I think is the scariest part about the Patriots is if their defense finds a way to play better than they already are, and they're only giving up the third most points in the league, this team could be almost unstoppable, but their offense is pretty much unstoppable. It is fantastic. They can run the ball. They can pass the ball. They can just do so many different things with their tight ends, with their receivers, with their versatility on offense, and not to mention they're getting Dion Lewis back, their best running back on their team. So the Patriots are a huge issue, and that is why I have the rest of the contenders formulating around them. So those are my top 5 contenders: the New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos, the Dallas Cowboys, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Kansas City Chiefs. My pretenders for the season: the Seattle Seahawks, the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, the Oakland Raiders, and the Atlanta Falcons. Now, it's not saying that these teams are going to do well, but it's saying that they probably won't win the Super Bowl. This is Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Let me know who your 5 pretenders and contenders are for the rest of the 2016 NFL season, and who do you think will win the Super Bowl at the end of the day, and even tell me what your Super Bowl matchup will be. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more NFL debates, NFL previews, fantasy football advice, and more on the Bottom Line View. Thanks guys again for watching. Peace out.